When Donald Trump first heard about the funeral, he didn't say a word. He didn't ask for press. He didn't make a statement. He just stood in silence, holding a single sheet of paper, a printed obituary of a 10-year-old boy named Caleb Ward, born in Kentucky, passed away in a children's hospital 3 days earlier. The article barely made it into the news. No viral video, no hashtags, just a quiet, unnoticed mention of a child who loved two things: American flags and Donald J. Trump. Caleb had been sick for 2 years. Stage 4 neuroblastoma. It started in his stomach, then spread. By the time doctors caught it, it was too late. The treatments helped, briefly, but the cancer came back stronger, faster. He was brave, they said, tough, smiled through chemo, sang during surgeries, but in the end, the pain was too much. He passed in his sleep, holding a MAGA hat in one hand and a wrinkled photo of Trump in the other. The funeral was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m., at a small Baptist church off a dirt road outside of Elkhorn City. No press, no speeches, just a casket no one expected would be watched by anyone but a pastor and the boy's mother. His name wasn't trending. His story wasn't told, except someone forwarded it. A nurse at the hospital had taken a photo of Caleb weeks before he passed. He was smiling, thin, pale, frail, but smiling, wrapped in an American flag blanket. The caption read, "All he talks about is Donald Trump. He said if he had one wish, it wouldn't be Disneyland. It'd be to meet him." The post had 3 likes. One of them belonged to a volunteer at a local VA center who happened to be the niece of a woman who once helped plan security at Trump's rallies. The woman saw the post, sent it to someone in Mar-a-Lago. It took 2 days to reach Trump's desk. By then, Caleb was already gone. Trump didn't speak when he read it. He just folded the paper and said, "Find out where the funeral is." His team scrambled. No press, no leaks. He made it clear. This wasn't political. This was personal. Tuesday came. The church was empty. 3 rows of pews, faded carpet, a piano with 2 missing keys. The casket was small, white, decorated with plastic stars. On top lay a folded flag and Caleb's favorite red hat. His mother sat alone in the front pew, wearing a black coat 2 sizes too big. Her hands were trembling, her eyes fixed on the casket. The pastor stood beside her, nervously looking at the clock. 10:28 a.m. Still no one. A gust of wind slammed the front door open. Everyone turned. A black coat stepped inside. Then the red tie. Then the unmistakable face of the 45th President of the United States. Donald Trump walked into the church alone. No Secret Service in view, no cameras, no entourage, just him. He didn't speak, didn't nod. He walked slowly down the aisle, past the empty pews, and stood in front of the casket. He looked down at Caleb's photo taped to the side. Then he knelt. No one breathed. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a single red rose, placed it on the casket, then stood and whispered something so quiet only the boy's mother heard. She covered her mouth with both hands. Trump turned, walked past her, stopped, held out his hand. She rose, shaking, and took it. He said, "Your son was braver than most men I've met in Washington." She couldn't answer. The pastor stepped forward. "Sir, would you like to say something?" Trump shook his head. "No." Then he paused, looked back at the casket. "But I'll stand with him." And he did. The service was short, 32 minutes. Trump stood the entire time. No expression, no fidgeting, just silence. Respect. When it ended, he waited for everyone to leave. Then he walked back to the casket, placed his hand on the lid, and said, "You didn't get to see America yet, kid, but you reminded her who she is." Then he left. No one knew he had been there. Not until days later, when a photo surfaced, taken by the church security camera, of Trump kneeling at the casket. The image went viral. But by then, it didn't matter. Because Trump had already made one more move. He created a scholarship, named it after Caleb Ward. It was small at first, just enough to help one child fighting cancer each year. But it grew, and in the press release, there was no quote from Trump. Only one line, in Caleb's handwriting, copied from a note he wrote before passing. "One day, I'll walk again, and I'll wave a flag real high." It started with a blurry still image from an old security camera mounted high above the chapel doors. A pixelated figure in a dark coat, kneeling in front of a small white casket. The red tie gave it away. Someone zoomed in, posted it to a local Facebook group titled Eastern Kentucky Prayer Chain. The caption read, "This looks like Trump. Anyone know if this is real?" Within 12 hours, the image was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Fox, Newsmax, even places that never touched his name unless it was followed by outrage. The reactions came fast. "This has to be AI. Say what you want about the man. This is powerful." Where was CNN? "I'm sobbing. He did this in silence." Reporters called the church, then the funeral home, then the mother. She didn't answer any of them, except one, Trump. She called him the day after the image broke. All she said was, "They know now." Trump paused, then said, "Let them." Back at Mar-a-Lago, his staff was caught off guard. The photo wasn't supposed to get out. There was no campaign plan around it, no soundbite, no post scheduled. One advisor asked, "Do you want to respond?" Trump shook his head. "No." But that silence only made the story grow. On a morning news show, a retired Marine broke down in tears. On a podcast, a former nurse whispered, "We forgot how much it means to just show up." Cable networks didn't know how to frame it. No politics, no angle. Just a president kneeling for a boy who loved him. Quietly. Alone. The White House released no comment. But behind the scenes, Trump was already writing something. Not a press statement, not a campaign memo. A letter. He wrote it in black Sharpie, folded it, and asked a member of his team to deliver it in person. It was addressed to Caleb's mom. Inside was a single sentence. "When no one else came, your son reminded me to never stop showing up." No signature, just -DT scribbled in the corner. The mother framed it, hung it next to Caleb's hospital photos. Meanwhile, the world kept asking questions. Why didn't the media report on the funeral before? Why was no one there? Why did Trump go? And still, he said nothing. Then, a week later, a tweet appeared from his account. Just a photo, no caption. It was the image from the funeral. And below it, a video link. When people clicked, they found a 2-minute montage, soft piano, still frames of Caleb, news clips about his illness, and finally, Trump kneeling at the casket. At the end, a quote appeared on screen. "Not everything has to be televised, but some moments deserve to be remembered." It ended there. No talking head, No narration, just truth. It exploded. Even critics stopped short. A prominent liberal columnist wrote, "I don't like him, but this was human, and that matters." Others weren't so generous. One pundit said, "This was political theater." Another, "If this is who he really is, why don't we see it more?" But real Americans didn't need answers. They felt it. One father, whose daughter had just entered hospice, posted, "He showed up for someone else's kid. And now I feel like I'm not alone." Then came the letters. Thousands. Veterans, teachers, truckers, pastors, kids. Some angry, some moved, but most just thankful. Harper, the girl who once sang the anthem with one lung, sent a hand-drawn card. It read, "He didn't come for votes, he came for love. That's rare. Keep being rare." Trump framed it, put it on his office wall, next to Caleb's photo. That week, during a rally, Trump paused before stepping out onto stage. His team expected the usual intro, but instead, he walked up slowly, held the mic, and said, "A little boy in Kentucky reminded me why I started all this. Not to win, but to serve. And when the cameras weren't there, when it wasn't about ratings, I went to be with him, because he believed in something bigger than any of us." The crowd stood in silence, then erupted. But Trump didn't soak in the applause. He waved them down and added, "From this point forward, let's make sure no American child ever leaves this world feeling unseen." The crowd roared. But in Liberty Falls and Elkhorn City, the sound wasn't volume. It was unity. Something real and something rare. The paperwork for the Caleb Ward Memorial Scholarship was signed quietly. No press conference, no ribbon cutting, just a check from Trump, a signature, and a handwritten line at the top of the file. For the kids who feel invisible. The team handling it wasn't from a foundation. It was personal staff, trusted, quiet, loyal. The mission was simple. Find a child who reminded them of Caleb. Someone sick, overlooked, brave. It didn't take long. In Ohio, a 12-year-old girl named Lexi was fighting stage 3 bone cancer. She lived with her grandmother in a trailer near Youngstown. Her mom had passed from a car accident. Her dad had left. Doctors gave her 6 months without advanced treatment. Her Medicaid was tied up in paperwork. Hospitals refused to proceed. But Lexi had something else. She had written a letter. Addressed to President Trump, it read, "I don't want anything big. Just one more Christmas with my grandma. I want to see snow fall on the flag outside our door." The letter was never mailed. Her grandmother kept it under a stack of papers on the kitchen table. Until one night, a church volunteer helping clean up found it, took a photo, and posted it to a local veterans group online. 6 hours later, it was forwarded to the team managing Caleb's fund. 12 hours after that, Trump saw it. He read the letter twice, then asked, "How fast can we get to her?" His staff moved. Fast. No cameras, no media. Just a covered medical van, 2 staff members, and a nurse from Trump's personal team. They arrived the next day with a single sentence. "We're here because someone believed you should see snow." Lexi cried when they told her. Not from pain, from disbelief. They flew her to the same hospital Trump had helped Caleb's mom visit before. Specialists, private care, the works. The bill? Covered. Trump paid it personally. No donors. No GoFundMe. Just one man following through. When Lexi woke up after her first procedure, a small box sat on the table. Inside was a snow globe and a note. You don't need to see snow to believe in something bigger, but it helps. DT. That Christmas, the East got hit with a snowstorm. Lexi, barely able to walk, stepped out onto the hospital balcony in her gown and whispered, "Thank you." A nurse filmed it, but no one posted it right away. Until a week later, on the anniversary of Caleb's passing. Then the clip hit social media. Lexi standing in the snow, holding a MAGA hat in one hand, her fourth pole in the other, eyes closed, face toward the sky. The caption read, "You kept your promise, Mr. President." It spread fast. Not because of politics, because people could feel it. She wasn't viral. She was real. News outlets couldn't ignore it. But they didn't know what to say. There was no press release, no tour, no statement. Just a girl in a blizzard whispering thanks to a man the world expected to only fight, never feel. Trump refused interviews, but behind the scenes, he had one request. He called Caleb's mom, asked if she'd be willing to speak to Lexi's grandmother. She agreed. They spoke for an hour, cried together, prayed together, then made a decision. Together, they would help Trump expand the fund, not just for terminal cases, but for forgotten kids everywhere. And the name? The Promise Project, in memory of Caleb Ward. By the end of that month, Trump had signed off on the expansion. More funds, more staff, still no cameras. His advisors warned, "This doesn't help the campaign." He replied, "It's not for the campaign, it's for the country." Then added, "We don't need to win the race to be worth remembering." Lexi's second round of treatment was a success. Doctors were hopeful. And when she opened her eyes after the final surgery, there was another note taped to the window. "You're part of something now, bigger than you know, and you earned it." Signed simply, your friend, Donald. The moment the Promise Project gained traction, the critics came hunting. Not because of what it was, but because of who started it. They didn't attack the children. They couldn't. But they questioned the motives, the timing, the silence. One late-night host joked, "I guess Donald Trump is now in the business of saint-making, just without the humility." A blue-check journalist on X posted, "Don't be fooled. This Promise Project is just emotional branding in disguise, using dying children to soften an authoritarian image. It's the oldest trick in the book." CNN ran a panel. The Trump Redemption Tour, calculated or compassionate? Trump didn't flinch. He watched from Mar-a-Lago, watched the same networks who ignored Caleb's funeral now weaponize his silence. But the part that hit hardest wasn't from pundits. It came from a letter, unsigned, delivered in a plain envelope, typed in 12-point font. No return address. If you really cared about those kids, you would have done this while in office. You're only showing heart because you're losing votes. He stared at that letter for 10 full minutes, then stood up and walked outside. The sun was hot, the sky cloudless. And in that moment, Trump didn't feel defensive. He felt something else. Resolve. The next day, he called a small press conference, not in front of flags or podiums, but in front of a wall of hand-drawn letters from children helped by the Promise Project. He stood quietly for a moment, then began. "I didn't start this to win voters. I started it because a 10-year-old boy died, and I was the only one who showed up." He held up Caleb's framed letter. He believed in me, not because I was famous, because I reminded him of something strong, something American. Then he pulled out Lexi's snow globe. This was her wish. To see snow. That's not political. That's human. Then he looked into the camera. If you think kindness needs to be proven by a microphone, you've forgotten what it means to simply do what's right. He ended with one line. I didn't need an audience at the funeral. I just needed to show up. The clip went viral. Even some critics backed off. Not all, but enough. Then something unexpected happened. Families across the country began writing in, not asking for help, but offering it. A trucker in Oklahoma sent $800 in crumpled bills. His note read, I ain't rich, but I know what it's like to be forgotten. A teacher in Nebraska offered to tutor kids in the program online for free. A retired Marine in Arizona sent a folded flag with one sentence, Promise kept. The project exploded. What began as a tribute to one boy turned into a national outpouring of support. Quiet, unprompted, unorganized. They called themselves Promise Keepers. Not a political group. A movement. They wore small gold pins with a single word etched in script. Show up. And Trump? He stopped defending himself. He let the stories do the speaking. One night, Lexi appeared in a surprise video posted to the project's site. She sat in a chair, weaker than before, but smiling. She looked into the camera and said, You can say whatever you want about him, but he showed up. That's all I'll ever remember. Then she waved and whispered, Thank you, Mr. Trump. The clip reached over 80 million views in 2 days. No ads, no campaign links, just heart. The call came in the middle of the night, a quiet ring on a secure line. Trump answered without hesitation. It was a pediatric nurse from a hospice ward in Tennessee. She didn't start with hello. She just said, He's not going to make it to morning, but he keeps asking for you. The boy's name was Jordan, 8 years old, liver failure. His doctors had done all they could. He wasn't asking for a cure, he was asking for company, for the man he called my president. His last wish wasn't Disneyland or meeting a celebrity. It was a conversation. 1 minute. One question. Just to hear his voice. Trump didn't ask for details. He just said, Where? 3 hours later, under cover of darkness, Trump's motorcade pulled into the back lot of the hospice facility. No reporters, no announcements, just him and one trusted aide. He wore a long coat, a hat low over his brow, and a silence that carried purpose. The nurse met him at the back door, eyes wet. She whispered, He's awake. Barely. Trump nodded, walked down the long hallway lined with children's paintings and soft beeping monitors. The door creaked open. The room was dim. Jordan lay curled under a patriotic quilt, MAGA hat on the nightstand, and a folded Bible in his lap. His eyes fluttered open. And then they widened. You came. Trump stepped inside, sat on the edge of the bed. You asked, he said. Jordan smiled weakly. I prayed. Trump didn't smile, but his eyes did. Then Jordan asked, Did I do okay? Trump leaned in. You did great. Better than most. Jordan closed his eyes, whispered, I'm not scared anymore. Trump placed a hand gently on the boy's chest. You don't need to be. Then, in a moment no one expected, he took off his own cufflink, solid gold, with the presidential seal, and placed it in the boy's hand. "I want you to hold this until you walk through the gate," he said. "Show it to him. Tell him you stood for something." Jordan nodded. One tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered, "Thank you, sir." And then he was gone. The monitors didn't beep. The nurses didn't panic. They had seen this before, but never like this. Trump stood in silence, his shoulders heavy, his lips pressed together. The nurse walked him out without a word, but she couldn't let the moment disappear. From the hallway camera, she downloaded 10 seconds of grainy footage. Trump, sitting quietly at the bedside of a dying child, whispering something no one else could hear. She didn't sell it. She didn't post it right away. She sent it privately to the Promise Project with a note. "I just thought people should know who he really is." The clip was released 1 week later. Just 10 seconds. No sound, no edits. But it became the most shared piece of media in America that year. The caption was simple. "He just showed up. Again." The nation didn't cry because it was political. They cried because it was pure. Across churches, schools, and homes, people stood in silence and watched it on repeat. Even some of Trump's fiercest critics admitted they didn't know what to say. One commentator said, "I've criticized this man for years, but that was different." And when reporters asked Trump if the moment was real, if it was planned, he responded with just 4 words. "You weren't supposed to see." After the footage of Trump and Jordan spread across the country, something shifted. Not in politics, but in people. For once, there were fewer arguments, fewer hashtags, fewer hot takes, just silence, reverence, and a question that lingered in the air like candle smoke. Why don't we remember them? Not presidents, not generals, not athletes. Children, the ones who fight their own quiet wars without headlines or cameras or crowds. Trump had been thinking the same thing. He wasn't a man known for stillness, but this time he sat alone for hours, in his study, lights off, holding the same folded photo of Caleb he had carried in his inner coat pocket for months. Then he called his team. "I want a day," he said. They asked, "For what?" He said, "For the forgotten kids. The ones like Caleb, like Lexi, like Jordan. The ones no one cheers for, but who carry more courage in one breath than most politicians do in their careers." His legal advisors told him there was no precedent. He didn't care. "I don't need precedent. I need principle." They started the paperwork. Quietly, carefully. The official title was long, National Day of Courage, in honor of America's forgotten children. But most people called it what Trump wrote at the top of the proposal in bold Sharpie, their day. It was scheduled for March 21st, the day Caleb was laid to rest. The idea wasn't to make it political. It wasn't about rallies. It was about remembering, reflecting, doing something good, visiting a hospital, writing a letter, standing for someone who couldn't stand anymore. The announcement was made in the simplest way possible. No speech, no music. Just a 1-minute video posted to the Promise Project's site. Trump sat at a desk, American flag behind him, Caleb's framed letter beside him. He looked into the camera and said, "We have Memorial Day, we have Veterans Day, but we've never had a day to honor the children we've lost, not to war, but to sickness, silence, and neglect. I'm not doing this because it's popular. I'm doing this because it's right." He paused, then added, "On March 21st, take a moment. Not for me, not for politics, for a child who never made the headlines, but who left this world braver than most who did. It was quiet. It was real. And America listened. For the first National Day of Courage, thousands posted photos of candles lit at sunset. Children held signs that read, "I remember Caleb." In Texas, Lexi, now regaining strength, read her letter on a live stream viewed by over 40 million people. In Kentucky, Caleb's mother stood on her porch, holding her son's Bible, whispering prayers. In Tennessee, the nurse who recorded Trump's visit to Jordan lit a lantern and wrote in chalk on the sidewalk outside her ward, "He kept his promise." Even the White House, despite not officially endorsing the day, lowered the flag to half-mast for 24 hours. Some called it political. Others called it performative. But most called it overdue. Because, for the first time in a long time, America remembered its children, not through numbers or policies, but by name, by photo, by heart. And Trump? He didn't attend any ceremony. Instead, he walked alone through a children's hospital in Ohio. Unannounced, he handed out small wooden coins with the words, "You matter," etched on one side and "never forgotten" on the other. When one boy asked, "Are you the president?" Trump smiled and said, "No, buddy. Today, I'm just the guy who showed up." That clip went viral, too. But it wasn't what made people cry. It was what Trump said afterward, off camera, overheard by a nurse. "This country forgot its heartbeat. Maybe these kids can give it back." March 21st came again. Cold, overcast, quiet. 1 year since the morning Donald Trump walked into a nearly empty Kentucky church and knelt beside the casket of a 10-year-old boy no one knew. 1 year since a single act of silent respect rewired how a nation thought about its forgotten children. 1 year since Caleb Ward changed the course of a man who had already changed the world. The new headstone had been installed weeks earlier. Black granite. Polished. Simple. It read, "Caleb Ward loved God, flags, and his country. I'll wave it high one day." The grave was tucked near the back of the small cemetery, where the land curved into trees and birds sang softly through bare branches. There were no cameras that day, no crowds, just one black SUV that pulled into the gravel path before sunrise. The door opened. Trump stepped out. Dark coat, gloves, a single white rose in one hand. He walked alone to the grave. No staff, no speech. He stood in silence for a long time. Then he knelt, placed the rose at the base of the stone, and pulled a folded paper from his inside pocket. He read it once to himself, then laid it gently beneath the rose. It was a letter. "Dear Caleb, you kept your promise. Now I'll keep mine. They remember you now. They remember all of you. I was late to your life, but I won't be late for the rest. I'll keep showing up. You earned that much. D.T." Then he stood, brushed the leaves off the edge of the stone, and walked away. But what he didn't know was that a groundskeeper, arriving early, had seen the whole thing from a distance. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. When Trump left, the man approached the grave, saw the note, and gently placed a small plastic cover over it to protect it from the rain. Then he did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He took off his hat and saluted. The groundskeeper posted a short message to Facebook later that day. He came back. No cameras, no crowd. Just a man keeping his word. The post was shared over 1 million times in 48 hours. By evening, others followed. Photos began pouring in from across the country. People visiting children's graves. People placing letters on stones. People lighting candles next to photos of kids gone too soon. The hashtag was simple. #sign for Caleb. It was trending on every platform. Not because it was political, because it was pure, because it mattered. Trump didn't comment. But the next morning, the Promise Project site quietly updated its homepage with a new quote. "We show up. For the ones who can't. That's the promise." And underneath, a live map of the country. Thousands of red dots showing every single location where someone had lit a candle, left a letter, or visited a grave. At the bottom was one final message. Caleb, we kept it. The invitation came with gold lettering, pressed wax, and an official seal. It was the first of its kind, a national youth summit titled the Courage Conference, inspired by the Promise Project. A gathering of thousands, students, parents, teachers, nurses, pastors, everyday Americans who had been touched by the movement, sparked by one boy's funeral and the man who chose to show up. The organizers expected Donald Trump to speak. The keynote was his if he wanted it. But Trump declined. He said, "I'm not the story. I just showed up for one." The planning committee pushed back. They offered a video message, a short appearance, even a remote call-in. Trump said no. But he made one request. Let the kids tell it. Let the ones who lived it speak. They agreed. The event was held in Dallas. Stadium lights. Flags on every wall. The stage had a massive banner overhead. For the ones who couldn't finish the fight. Trump was scheduled in the final slot. But when the moment came, the MC stepped to the mic with an envelope in hand. I was asked to read this instead. She opened it. It was handwritten in thick black marker. Dear America, tonight isn't about me. It's about a boy named Caleb, a girl named Lexi, and a nurse who stayed up all night so a dying boy named Jordan wouldn't be alone. I've had microphones my whole life. They only needed a moment. So tonight, I'm giving mine to them. Donald J. Trump. Then something strange happened. 3 chairs were rolled onto the stage. One was empty, Caleb's. The second held Lexi, thinner than before, but strong. The third held the hospice nurse from Tennessee. They didn't give speeches. They just answered questions. A child from the crowd stood and asked Lexi, "What do you think bravery means?" She smiled. Bravery means singing even when it hurts to breathe. Another asked the nurse, "What did President Trump say to Jordan?" She paused. He said, "You stood for something." And Jordan smiled. That was the last thing he did. The entire stadium stood in silence. Then the lights dimmed, and a soft recording played. It was the audio from Lexi's very first video, the one where she whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Trump." The screen showed only words. We don't need more speeches. We need more people who show up. Start there. That's how we change everything. When the lights came back on, the stage was empty again. No music, no exit, just a sea of standing people, many of them crying, none of them clapping, because the moment wasn't about noise. It was about presence. Back in Florida, Trump watched the live stream alone. He didn't call, didn't post, but he made a quiet request to his team. Send Lexi something personal. They asked what? He said, "My first tie from the campaign. The red one, and a note." They packaged it carefully, Inside was the tie, folded with care, and a single handwritten card. "You were the real headline. DT." Lexi opened it a week later. She didn't say anything. She just held it close and whispered, "I'll keep showing up." Lexi's strength didn't fade all at once. It happened gradually. A little less energy each morning. A little more time spent in bed. Her grandmother knew. The nurses knew. And deep down, Lexi knew too. But she didn't complain. She didn't cry. She smiled and kept saying the same thing. "There's still one more thing I want to do." She didn't tell anyone at first. She just stared at the red tie that Trump had sent, the one from his first campaign. It hung on the edge of her bed like a badge. One day, she asked her grandmother for a sewing kit. She hadn't sewn before, but she had a plan. Over the course of 2 quiet weeks, Lexi stitched something by hand. She cut gently, sewed slowly, and prayed often. When she finished, she folded it up and placed it in a small box. Then she asked her nurse to deliver it to Mar-a-Lago. Inside the box was a miniature American flag, red and white stripes stitched from strips of hospital gown and the red tie Trump had worn in 2016. The stars were embroidered with thread from a nurse's scrubs. And pinned to the corner was a small tag that read, "This is what you gave me. A country to believe in again. It's your turn to carry it now. Lexi." The box arrived on a Friday. Trump opened it alone in his study. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just held the flag in both hands and stared at it for nearly 10 minutes. That night, he made one call. To Lexi's grandmother. They didn't speak long. He just said, "I got it. Tell her I'm going to carry it." The next morning, Lexi slipped into a deeper sleep. By Sunday, she was gone. Peacefully, quietly, holding a photo of Caleb in one hand and her tiny hand-sewn flag in the other. The news didn't break immediately. There was no announcement. Just a new photo on the Promise Project's homepage. It showed the flag Lexi made, framed in glass, with a spotlight shining down on it. The caption read, "She gave it back to the country." Then came the tributes. Thousands posted images of homemade flags. Kids drew crayon flags and taped them to windows. Truckers hung Lexi's name on their back bumpers. Teachers told her story before the Pledge of Allegiance. Then something unexpected happened. Donald Trump took the stage at his next rally wearing a dark suit, but instead of a traditional tie, he wore a small flag pin made from fabric. Reporters zoomed in. It was a strip of red from Lexi's flag. He never mentioned it. But during the final moment of his speech, he paused and said, "Some people are remembered for what they said, others for what they built. But the ones who leave the deepest mark are the ones who gave more than they ever got back. Lexi gave everything, and this flag." He placed his hand on his chest. "This flag is worth carrying again." The crowd stood in silence. Then, one by one, people in the audience raised small handmade flags above their heads. No music, no cue, just respect. A week later, Trump's campaign released a new slogan, one not written by consultants or tested by pollsters. Just 3 words, "Keep showing up." It appeared on bumper stickers, hats, signs, and T-shirts. But more importantly, it appeared in places where no slogan ever had: hospital rooms, pediatric wards, and front porches with empty wheelchairs. Because Lexi's final act wasn't about politics. It was about passing the flag. And Donald Trump? He carried it. Not for votes. For her. The memorial wasn't grand. It wasn't built by government contracts or approved by committees. It rose quietly in the hills of Kentucky, on a donated acre of land near the spot where Caleb Ward was laid to rest. No visitor center, no marble dome. Just 7 flagpoles, a walking path, and a wall. Not of stone, but of names. Names carved into copper plaques. Children, forgotten, brave, ordinary, loved. At the top of the wall were the first 3. Caleb Ward, Lexi Monroe, Jordan Pierce. Beneath each was a small phrase. He believed before anyone else did. She gave the flag back. He asked one question and died with peace. No media covered the opening. There wasn't an opening, just a path, a bench, and a small sign that read, "The Promise Wall for the children who fought quietly." For months, it stayed quiet. People came, quietly, left flowers, stuffed animals, toy flags. But then, one morning, the stillness changed. A single black SUV pulled into the dirt lot. The door opened. Donald J. Trump stepped out. No speechwriters, no crowd, just him. He carried something wrapped in cloth. He walked the path slowly, hand on his chest. He stopped in front of the wall, took a deep breath, and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was the tiny flag Lexi had sewn, the one made from his red tie and hospital gown strips. He placed it in a small weatherproof display under her name, and beside it he slid a sealed letter into the clear box attached to the base of the wall. It was addressed simply, "To the next president." Then he sat on the bench and waited. No one approached him. No one disturbed him. But a park ranger watching from a distance later said he saw something he never forgot. Trump stood, turned to leave, then stopped, walked back to the wall, and placed both hands on the copper. He whispered something no one could hear. But the ranger saw his lips form 3 words. "I kept it." Then he walked away. A photo surfaced days later. Someone had driven by as Trump stood alone at the wall. The photo was blurry, distant, but unmistakable. A former president standing still, head bowed, in front of the names of 3 children who'd never seen high school, never made the news, and never asked for anything, except to be remembered. The photo went viral, but not like before. Not with comments, not with controversy. It just spread. Shared by mothers, by veterans, by teachers. No caption. Just understanding. 3 days later, the Promise Project received a package. Inside was a handwritten letter from a young girl in Oklahoma. It read, "I don't want to be famous. I just want to be someone worth remembering. If I don't make it, can you put my name on the wall too?" They did, and her family visited 6 months later, stood in front of her plaque, and whispered the same 3 words Trump had spoken. "We kept it." Trump never returned to the spotlight in the same way again. He spoke when needed, appeared when called. But something had changed. The final image of him that America saw before he left public life for good wasn't on a debate stage or behind a gold podium. It was at a wall, surrounded by names, holding a flag made by a girl who had nothing, but gave everything. And when historians one day try to capture his legacy, they won't just study his policies. They'll study the funeral he attended alone, the flag he wore that wasn't made in a factory, And the promise he made, not with microphones, but with footsteps. Because in the end, he didn't need to rewrite history. He just needed to show up for the ones history forgot. And that's exactly what he did. And that's where this story rests. For now, not with headlines or applause, but with a flag stitched from courage and a promise quietly kept. Because in the end, every child matters. Every life leaves a mark. No one is forgotten when someone chooses to remember. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment and let us know. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the quiet power of showing up, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. We share stories like this every week to lift hearts, stir thought, and bring light to the corners most people overlook. Your support keeps these voices alive, and these promises from being broken. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next one.